Hi, Luna.
Hi, Mom.
Welcome to our second episode of the You Hear Big Girls podcast. I'm Mom Taku. I'm best known from Tumblr, where I've been blogging about this series since 2014.
And I'm Luna, but I'm better known as Wings of Moonlit Night on Reddit, where I upload everything related to the quote-unquote unofficial chapter poll.
So this month, Luna and I are delighted to have Leviskinnyjeans as our first guest. Those of you on the Tumblr side of the fandom may remember LSJ, since their blog is still a popular resource for interviews, translations, and fandom news. Leviskinnyjeans, welcome.
Hello. Most people know me as LSJ. I was a translator and news fan blogger on Tumblr for about 3 years. And I've been in fandom on and off for about 5 years. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you here.
Absolutely. You're somebody that I have admired for a very long time, so it's nice to finally meet you.
The feeling is mutual.
So chapter 109 was called Guides, and something I've appreciated is how Isayama always works the chapter titles into several of the story plots. The primary guide in this chapter, of course, is when Kaya recounts how she was guided to safety by Sasha, but in this chapter we also learn about how Mikasa unintentionally guided Louise into the Survey Corps. And we also discover from Pyxis that it was Floch who guided Yelena to Eren, and apparently helped with the mission to Liberia.
Yeah, so let's start with the first scene of chapter 109, which was Balco and Gabi arriving at the Blouse stables. So what did you think of them ending up at Sasha's house?
I was a little disappointed. I had wanted them to show up at Historia's farm, but surprise, surprise, it's one and the same. So I thought that was something I just was not expecting, to see the Blouse family show up in this capacity as like a government subsidized orphan horse farm or whatever the designation is. So something else that I don't know if it was just an aside or if it was actually a plot point, but early on when Papa Blouse starts talking, Gabi says or takes note of the fact that he speaks with what she called a Southern Marleyan accent, and she looks really surprised by that. So I'm super curious about whether or not that was just a moment that was thrown in so that Gabi sees these people as her people, or if this is significant. And I was curious what you guys think.
So now we have this idea that the people on the island might not be pure Eldian. So we might actually have more of a mix of cultures and ethnicities than we originally thought. So the Marlenians hate the Eldians, but the people on the island could actually be part Marlenian. Even Sasha might be part Marlenian, and that's something that we'll never find out because, as far as we know, as long as you're part Eldian, you can still be turned into a Titan, isn't that right?
Yeah, because Reiner is half Marleyan, and he's still able to turn into a Titan.
So I felt like that was interesting, that mixture of cultures.
I wonder, though, if when she said, does Gabi consider herself Marleyan? When she said Southern Marleyan accent, did she mean like an Eldian from the southern part of Marley, or did she mean an actual Marleyan?
I think it's just a typical accent in that region. And I kind of think maybe it's from Eldians in the ghetto. Maybe they also lived in southern Marley, or maybe who knows, back like 100 years, people were, the Eldians were still suppressing the Marleyans, right, and the rest of the world, according to the stories that we know now. So maybe they all lived together at one point in the same area. And as we know quite often that when one people conquer another, they do force their own language and their style of speaking and their culture on them. So I wonder if one people force the other to speak the same language, which is also why the Eldians and Marleyans share the same language at this point in time.
I was also thinking, I feel like it kind of parallels what happens in real life. For example, the current Southern drawl in the United States is actually a slowed down version of the high British accent that used to exist in England. So I think it's kind of funny when you take that in consideration. Sasha, who is always made fun of for the bumpkin way she was speaking, actually has something, if we keep that in mind, like closer to like an aristocratic or possibly aristocratic accent to Marley, at least. I mean, it's a possibility.
That's a really cool point. I hadn't considered that. I like that a lot, that here she's been made fun of this accent, but actually the more pure of the accents.
Yeah, it's also kind of funny because she tried to change her way of speaking, as you all recall. She was trying to be all proper and decent in her way of speaking.
And I bet you to the government, she probably would have been speaking in the most proper way, or at least if she were in Marley. You know what I also thought was cute? I'm a Texan, so I'm very used to accents, and I thought the accents here were portrayed they're very cute. I love Mr. Bross's breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if this is actually going to be a plot point or if it's just, just something interesting in the text.
For now, I think it's just going to be something interesting that might lead to some revelation later on, but I don't think the revelation will be very important. It's more like, oh, we all used to live together kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm on that train of thought as well.
It's just interesting. Interesting he gave a panel to that. So any other points in Breakfast at the Blouses that you all found interesting?
Well, I don't know if it's interesting per se, but I really liked Sasha's mom, Lisa. Like, Gabi is like completely shook during the entire breakfast. She doesn't want to be there. And, Lisa tries to comfort her and she just hits her hand away. And instead of being shocked or upset, she empathizes with Gabi and, thinks she must have been through something very rough. And, that's very nice to see that they're quite decent people that they've ended up with.
Yeah, Sasha came from good people.
Yeah, she really did.
In the chapter poll, we asked about, because we got 3 newly named characters in this chapter. We got Lisa, Blouse, Kaya, and Louise. And I was a little sad that Lisa only got, 3% of the vote, 4% of the vote for best new character. Kaya definitely was the landslide winner in that poll.
I voted for Lisa for what it's worth.
I voted for Lisa too.
Yeah. Well, let's go from extremely lovely people to extremely terrible people. What do you think about seeing Zackly and Kiyomi together?
I had hoped that he slipped and died in a poop machine accident. So seeing him as head of state was, I won't say it's unexpected, but I was a little disappointed to have him back. But then again, snakes on a boat or snakes on a plane or whatever works for me.
I thought I was very amused by how well they got along with each other. I also feel like they're both trying to outsnake each other somehow. I definitely feel like that plane isn't just for surveillance purposes only. The fact that it was covered just feels like there's something more to it.
It's still amazing to me that, the talk last chapter or 2 chapters ago, Zeke's plan was that there's no way Paradise could have the technology they need to survive in the world for 50 years. And here they've developed the world's first flying boat. So it's making me side-eye Zeke's estimate more so than I was before.
No, but it's not the first one, I think.
It said first.
No, it's the first one that's powered by the iceberg stone.
That's true too. So that's more like an engine thing than an actual building a plane.
If we can trust the translation, the exact words were, "Yes, I believe it is the world's first flying boat made possible by the use of iceberg stones as fuel." So it does seem like this is some kind of a new technology. I mean, my reading of it, is that it's a new technology never before seen, which, really speaks to either the power of the iceberg stones or else ingenuity of Hizuru or else Paradise. I'm having a little trouble telling, who developed it. I guess it was a joint effort.
I think it's Hizuru's because they were given the iceberg stone and they are using it. But they're showcasing what they managed to do with it. And then they're like, okay, we're just going to use it for its surveying.
I kind of feel like it's Paradise because we've already had these hints that Armin's family was working on flying machines, and we have in Lost Girls where they actually build somewhat of a working plane. So I feel like it's possible for Isiam to draw inspiration from there, or to easily say, well, we're building on the information from those people.
I like that. So maybe this was one of Armin's side projects or something that he contributed to, or his family's research. That would be very cool, actually. I was thinking that this is like Isayama being a boy with his toys and wanting to create some cool new technology. And, how can I work this into the story? I'm still of the hope that it crashes into the sea with Zackly and Kiyomi on board. But
a very lovely honeymoon.
Yes. They deserve each other. Yeah, their whole conversation is so sleazy. Like everything about the way that they are speaking. I mean, it's all you can tell they are professionals. They are absolutely professionals at not saying what they mean, speaking between the lines and just being generally sleazy and schmoozy. So I guess it was a great scene to have them together.
Well, I mean, personally, the less I see of Zackly, the better, honestly.
I wonder if his art show will ever be a part of the manga. I wonder if he ever went public with that.
Oh God, let's hope not, because then the anime will... Oh, I don't want to see that animated. They're going to make it 10 times worse.
Wasn't it already animated and they made I haven't seen the anime and I haven't even seen season 2 of the anime, but from what I heard on Twitter was that there was extra noises and
yeah, they made
Zackly
it worse.
Jerked his hands
yeah, stop.
Yeah. Let's change the subject. Yes, where are we?
Let's go from one shih tzu to the next. Let's talk about
Yes,
Floch.
please. Well, let's talk about Hanji first, because poor Hanji, man, that scene with the journalists all over her case. Some people view this as her, when Flegel says, look in my eyes and tell me that you're still the person I think you are, that you're still holding on to the beliefs, that her answer to him did not satisfy a lot of people. To me, it did. To me, she looks him in the eye and assures him this is for humanity. But I'm amazed at the number of people who disagree with that, who think that Hanji is behaving exactly as her predecessors.
Well, in a way, they also, part of them also thought that what they were doing was best for humanity, right? Or at least for humanity within the walls. They were also looking out for themselves more than maybe the population per se at times. But yeah, she's being very quiet. And of course, she has her reasons to be. But it doesn't work that well when first you're going to be the person who changes everything and makes all the information known to the public. And then you're closing everything off and pulling up a wall between you and the journalists. It doesn't quite work.
I kind of feel like Hanji has the worst job on the planet, and it's not even a job that they wanted. It's something that they were this is a position that they were forced into. I feel largely why Paradise is in experiencing so many problems is because no one was really prepared to take on this type of government structure. So when Erwin entrusted Hanji to be the commander of the Servant Corps, it was as it existed before. The Servant Corps is now no longer used as this scouting regiment. Essentially, they're an actual part of the government, and Hanji is no longer acting as a commander. They are acting as a politician, and that's not something that Hanji excels at. I feel like that's something that would have been more up Erwin's alley.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like Erwin really should have prepared them more for this eventuality, but he didn't have the time, so...
This is something completely off topic, but I've often wondered, Erwin was never the kind of person to leave things to chance. He's the 4D chess player who has the next 30 moves planned out. When he appointed Hanji as commander, she had no idea. She was not prepared for this. She was as shocked as everyone. But I have to wonder if, Survey Corps had lost so many people prior to that moment. Maybe Mike was his person he'd planned, or maybe someone like Deed and Ness. Maybe because of the expedition with the female Titan, where so many of them died, maybe the person that or the 1, 2, 3 people that he had intentioned for this role, unexpectedly died. And so Hanji, I feel like if he had always intended for it to be Hanji, he would have prepared her for it, and it would have been something that did not come as a complete shock.
Yeah, I just don't think the highest ranking people that are still left in the Survey Corps, which are Levi and Hanji, they're just both not well equipped enough to be the leader of the Survey Corps. And I still think they should have brought in someone from the outside to lead them. Someone like Pyxis, I think.
Oh, I think Pyxis might have been the best person to take care of parodies in this current situation. But I kind of feel like regardless of what happened, Erwin would have chosen Hanji as his successor because Hanji, they have an amazing relationship. Hanji has shown to be an more than adequate commander when they're on the actual field. The issue is what happened afterwards. Erwin had some idea of what would happen, but I don't think he could have foresaw what is happening currently what's currently happening to Paradisi at the moment. And we also have Erwin back in Uprising. He's showing regret, or at least thinking back on whether or not this was the right choice, overthrowing the entire government. And even he seemed kind of lost in how they were going to proceed from there. So I feel like it's not. I feel like it's not Hanji's fault. Hanji's doing the best they can with the very little preparation they were given and put in the role that they were essentially forced into. I also want to mention that I feel like there's not enough blame on Levy put on Levy for this because he's the one who's essentially put Hanji in this position because of 84, even though I agreed with his decision. I felt that it was very touching that he decided to save Erwin from the hell that was the SNK world. You can still criticize the fact that he's essentially left everything on Hanji's shoulders and still hasn't really helped them at all.
Yeah, it's a position Hanji never wanted, and now they're stuck in this position. I also think that there's not enough blame being given to, Hanji is a cog in the wheel and a cog in the military structure. They aren't the only commander. They aren't the head of state. They are a piece of it. And yet all the blame is going on Hanji for this. Looking at, again, the chapter poll this month, we asked, is Hanji doing a good job as commander? And the majority of votes are neutral on this topic. It does sort of lean to, yes, she's doing good. Yes, they're doing good. In fact, very few people strongly disagreed with the statement, but it's a thing where a lot of the fandom is on the fence about this. But I agree with you, LSJ. I don't even think Erwin, it's just it's a playing field that nobody expected to play on. The rules are different. There's no handbook, and Hanji's just been, thrust into this role.
Well, the thing is, I think now with the Survey Corps, they are full of people who, at the end of Return to Shiganshina arc, all acted very selfishly, which also kind of disillusioned Floch, because he really thought that they were out to save humanity and they have humanity's best interests in mind. But then in that, those couple of moments, they didn't act accordingly. And that's why I think someone like Pyxis, who does seem like that kind of person who puts humanity, in favor of before his own needs and desires, that he would be a better leader right now for the Survey Corps. And he also knows how to play the political game better than anyone else, I think.
I think Hanji's poker face is pretty good. The handling of the journalist was, exactly what somebody accustomed to that sort of environment would do, deferring questions to the MPs, to the people who were responsible.
I'll have to say that I'm a little worried about what's going to happen to Hanji in the upcoming chapters. The last shot that we see of Hanji when they're closing the gates on the journalist is Hanji surrounded by bars. Visually, I feel like that has a lot of impact. And this entire chapter, we've been seeing these images of Hanji in bars or putting people in prison. Actually, I think there's something of an irony there, and that's something that could possibly happen to Hanji in the future.
Absolutely. The symbolism in the chapter, I think there was a post on Tumblr about it that I reblogged, that everything is done to sort of show Hanji isolated behind bars. It's to create a sense of discomfort. And that's why that last panel of Hanji looking at the reader, in the eye and saying, no, there's more to learn, and standing up and moving forward. That panel gave me a lot of hope. It's been very frustrating and uncomfortable as somebody who loves Hanji to watch them enduring this. So I'm hoping that that's a positive sign. So speaking of someone being in jail, after Hanji left the journalists, she faced off with Floch and his co-conspirators. And I think that was a highlight for a lot of people, seeing this kind of showdown between these two different ideologies, I guess. What did you guys think?
Well, when we first got the chapter without the translation, like in Korean, I thought, I wonder why have they been jailed? I had no idea. I thought maybe it had to do with, just purely their ideology of wanting to create a new Eldian empire. But then I found out it was just for giving away details about Eren's current location. And I was a bit surprised.
I wonder about that. Hanji's words were, "You're the ones who leaked information about Eren." Was that to the journalists or was that to Yelena or both? Probably both.
I have to say this. I was really happy that Floch and Co. were seen as these types of extremists, and that the Eldian Empire, the idea of the Eldian Empire, was quickly admonished by Hanji.
This was something I was super curious from a fandom perspective, whether or not people agreed with Floch that Eren did nothing wrong, Eren should be freed, Eren is the salvation to Paradise. So again, on the chapter poll, we asked the question, Floch speaks the truth, and whether people agree or how strongly they agree or disagree with that statement. And it has been surprisingly split down the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the people who think that Floch speaks the truth are just a slight minority in the fandom. It looks like it's almost a 50-50 split with people who agree with this.
Yeah, this is like the most statistically normal divide that I've ever seen in the questions we've polled so far.
It's definitely right up there. I mean, this is something that people are very polarized about. Whether or not you see Eren as the salvation of Paradise, or if you think he's on taking people in the wrong direction, is something that, definitely has people divided.
To go back to something that Luna stated, I'm glad that you brought this up earlier, but I like how Isayama has shown the effects of the insubordination from 84. It's kind of cracked into the central foundation of the Survey Corps. No one's really sure who they can trust. Even in the panel where the meeting's going on, there are people whispering in the background about whether or not what Floch is saying has merit to it.
I love how Floch is always sort of the voice of a portion of the fandom. There's always some portion of the fandom that hears his voice and acknowledges it rings true to them. And so it is interesting to see the background characters sort of having that same moment.
I know this is a really grim topic, but I feel like this group of Eldian Restorationist Part 2 is kind of going to lead to the downfall of the current government as it stands right now. So I've been throwing this idea around with a couple of friends, but my thoughts were essentially that if Hanji is taken down by somebody, or if they're killed in the manga, it's going to be due to a human mob, and that might come from the Eldian Restorationists.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised, because we all know that the population right now has been fed limited information about what happened in Liberia, and they think it's all one big victory for them, that they're really turning things around, and now they're hearing these noises about like the big hero is being imprisoned, and maybe they also would like to restore their country back into this great empire, opposed to like living their entire lives locked inside these walls. So, and I think a lot of people are very displeased with Hanji at the moment. So I really hope it doesn't go there, but yeah, we'll see.
I was reading back over the signing event that Isayama did a few months ago. I think it was in March 2018. And there was a question asked about Floch, about whether or not Floch had a very important role. And the follow-up question was that they asked specifically, do you mean in an underhanded way? And Isayama answered yes. So I was looking at the translator note on that. It says that the interviewer used the word missile for guessing Floch's future. The term is slang generally used to mean cowardly and unethical. In the past, combat involved hands and swords. Using a missile would then be considered a cowardly move. So I think that's, maybe that's a spoiler, but whatever Isayama has planned for Floch, it does sound like it's going to be, he's already admitted to being a coward. He's already admitted to, those sorts of feelings. So it'll be real interesting to see what that important role is going to be. And if it involves hurting Hanji, I am going to go ballistic. I will be the missile at that point. I will nuke the manga. I will be furious. I hope it's not it. I hope maybe this is the underhanded role, sneaking around behind Hanji's back and leaking information. Maybe this is what he was talking about. I hope it doesn't get any darker than this.
No, again, Mom, wrong manga.
You're the worst. Let me have my happy thoughts. I am holding my happy thoughts.
I remember working with Yusenki staff on that particular translation. That was something that was a little difficult to get across. We weren't even sure whether or not to include the actual context of that statement of what missile in slang terms actually meant, because we weren't sure if that would change the actual meaning of the question.
Well, I'm glad you guys included the missile point, because I think it's so important that we understand the flavor of what he said.
Floch is the type of person who brings a gun to a knife fight.
Well, his words are definitely guns in knife fights. Floch was my voice during Serum Bowl. He said things that I thought needed to be said, but again, it was a gun and a knife. He has no tact. It was more like a hand grenade in a knife fight. I mean, it's absolutely take no prisoners. He just drops these statements with no tact, no consideration for how the recipients are going to take them. And I've always faulted him for that. But this time he's speaking so ideologically opposed to what I think that I have burned my Floch fan club membership card. He is dead to me. And if he hurts Hanji, yeah.
I really liked him, back at the end of Return to Shiganshina, because he's very honest and straightforward, and maybe a little bit without tact, but I think that's more something that he doesn't really know. It's not something that he does consciously. I don't think he's out to hurt people or just doesn't care how they feel. I think he truly cared about Hitch and really wanted her to know about Marlowe's last moments. But I didn't get any bad energy from him at the time. I think he was very disillusioned about the entire Survey Corps and what happened out on the battlefield. And, he just wanted to speak his mind about things. And as someone was also very direct and straightforward, I could appreciate that. But, he's kind of gone overboard with it, in the past 4 years.
I kind of feel like Floch is like a warped version of Jean. Everything that Floch has said can essentially be put down as the arguments of the common man. What would the common Jean say in this situation? I believe most of them probably would have argued towards saving Erwin. After learning their history, there are many people who are currently experiencing a surge of nationalistic pride in their own country. So I feel like Floch is someone he's essentially our warped mouthpiece for what a lot of people are probably saying in Paradise.
And he definitely believes what he's saying. I mean, that last panel of him walking away, his fists are slightly clenched, shoulders back. He's completely proud of what he's done. And his statement that he will happily be imprisoned if that will lead humanity to victory within the walls. I mean, he's not messing around. He's not backing down.
No.
He absolutely believes that the rumbling, Eren having the ability to capitalize on that power, is the key to saving Paradise. Yeah, I mean, and that's the attitude, like I said, of a lot of the fandom. A lot of the fandom absolutely agrees with that statement. Whereas Hanji, it might be a fairy tale. And I really do think when the rumbling happens, it's not going to be, the panacea or the cure-all for Paradise's problems. I mean, those Titans are facing inward. They are not facing outward. They are not there to protect the world or to protect Paradise. They are there to destroy Paradise.
Yeah.
I've always been pro everybody dies ending, even more so recently. But I feel like it'd be very difficult for them to get out of the situation they are currently. And Hanji cannot currently admonish Eren as a government figure due to the very complicated situation between Hanji, the people, and Eren. I feel like it would bring mass chaos essentially if Hanji were to take Eren down or to bring up those actions against Eren. So I feel like everything's kind of going to implode in on itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're clearly aiming for something, I don't know, catastrophic might be too harsh of a word, but it's definitely, everything is coming to a head. It's like you can almost see the writing on the wall at this point about where this is heading, and it's not good.
It certainly isn't. And I think Isayama intended at the beginning when he started with Attack on Titan to not have this happy-go-lucky ending, but over time he has adjusted his feelings on what he wants to do and how he wants to treat his fans. We'll see where it goes. I think it will be a bittersweet kind of ending where a lot of sacrifices will be made, but eventually they will be necessary to ensure a better future for everyone, and not just for the Polarization.
So we asked in the poll, based on this panel, when it comes to what's best for Paradise, who would you side with? Team Floch, Team Hanji, or neither? And again, it's another, the write-ins were almost a third of the responses. Yeah. Hanji has a slight lead given those options, but neither was second. So a lot of people realize that this is not as clear cut as we think. I mean, I'm Team Hanji. I feel like, and maybe that's naive. Maybe I'm as naive as they are, that there's place for diplomacy in the world, that the rumbling may not be salvation. But yeah, 20%, more than 20% believe that Floch is speaking the truth, 30% neither. And then a gigantic number of write-ins.
Yeah, a lot of people are like Team Eren or another team. They've aligned themselves, but not with Hanji or with Floch.
Yeah, I don't know that we've ever had so many write-ins on a single question.
I don't think so. So yeah, I'm Team No One. Out of the two of them, I'm Team No One.
I kind of feel like Isayama is trying to show that moderation is key. For example, in terms of diplomacy, Eren acted too quickly and too harshly in attacking Marleyan people, whereas in Hanji was being, I believe, a little too naive in what was being done with the volunteers and their approach in diplomacy and trying to reach out to the rest of the world. I feel like Hanji's closer, and that diplomacy is what is needed. But on the other hand, Hanji also allowed an enemy's cook to make food for all of their people.
Yeah, that was not the smartest move ever. That's for sure.
Nope.
Yeah, that's going to come back to bite them.
Yeah, you talked about this last podcast, but then I saw one of your posts. We should discuss that because there was a bottle of wine when the 104th was gathering and talking about what they were going to do with Eren.
Yes, there are bottles of wine everywhere.
So I feel relaxed when I see people drinking tea, but as soon as I see a bottle of wine, I'm now very concerned.
Yeah, I mean, Jean mentioned the wine, I don't know how many times, at least 2, maybe more, that the food and the drink have been extremely popular with the Paradisians.
It's been mentioned over and over again to the point where it's a little
annoying. If the Blouses are going to drink wine at the restaurant next chapter. Oh.
I kind of feel like if Nicolo's the one doing it, I kind of feel like he's going to spare the Blouse family because of his own personal feelings towards Sasha.
He'd better.
I hope he does.
Nicolo did not look happy about that bottle of wine. I mean, he clearly wasn't smiling and handing it off to the waiter. You know, it could be that he doesn't even know, or it could be that he suspects but isn't sure. I mean, there's no telling what his how complicit he is in this, but
I feel like he's totally complicit, and he just seems very sinister. I loved it. I love this type of poisoner archetype. So Nicolo is just like my favorite character in the entire manga right now.
Well, he is a prisoner. He wasn't a volunteer. So if Zeke had been planning something, do you guys think that the prisoners would have been let in on that?
No, I don't think anyone is in on what Zeke is planning. I think that Yelena is Zeke's number 2, and you know, she gives people the information they need, and and probably appeals to people using what appeals to them. You know, if Nicolo is against the poison wine, I mean, Yelena's brilliant. I'm sure she's appealed to him. You know, well, we won't use it unless we need to. We won't use it unless, you know, they won't release us. You know, she's probably floating the story in a way that's appealing to him.
I don't see any innocent intentions out of him, but that's because I want him to be bad. Oh, just let me have my poisoner.
Gee, Nicolo. You want him to be like the secret spy character that twirls his mustache at the end and pours a large glass of wine for Lisa Blouse and smiles as she drinks it. Okay. All right. We'll see that next chapter.
I don't think he'll poison the Blouse family, but I feel like he has been doing this for a very long period of time. And I feel like we are actually going to probably see Nile die in the next couple of chapters due to the wine, because they're going to be transformed into a Titan if it was Titan serum, or poisoned if it was actually poison.
Yeah, well,
I can't wait to see it happen.
Well, then Zeke would have to escape and turn into a Titan and do the roar, right?
Yeah. I mean, but most people are planning, next chapter, it not only closes the volume, it closes the arc. So if we don't have fireworks next chapter, I think people are going to be disgruntled.
Yeah.
I mean, this ends the arc.
I'm not sure where we are arc-wise. Is this like a transition volume? Are we already in the next arc? Is it still the end of the Marley arc?
I think the next chapter definitely closes. Well, I can't say definitely, but according to the pattern that's held the last several years, the next chapter closes the volume and the arc, unless he's breaking away from the 20 chapter arc format that he's had. Yeah.
But it definitely better be a good closing chapter, because the last 4 chapters have been very, very slow. Yeah, I'd like some meat with my side dishes, and this is coming from a vegetarian, so...
I feel like these chapters are going to be better in retrospect, because I thought, I'm not sure, the chapter where Armin was narrating was one of the dullest chapters in the entire manga, and it was mostly just because it was just completely explanation. There was just so much conversation about food, but then we had Nicola with the wine in 108, and that it just hits you like an anvil.
Right.
The implications of that. So I feel like that's probably what's going to happen with these chapters, where it's all kind of quiet, and then you realize, oh wait, damn, that if you remember the last chapters, oh my God, something really big's going to happen.
I think that's true too. The whole series is going to be better in retrospect. And maybe that's true of every monthly manga. When you're getting a story in this sort of slow drip format, where once a month, you get the chapter, you have all month to hope and dream about what's coming next. And then, of course you're going to be disappointed, because you're going to want things that don't happen yet. But I know my friends who've joined the fandom recently and have been able to binge, 100 chapters at a time, absolutely love the series. They don't see the pacing issues that we do. They just really love the story. I think emotionally they lose a little bit, like Serum Bowl was not as profound to them. I mean, when you're living a monthly manga, it absolutely impacts you. You have all those quiet hours to think about what happened, and for them really to... Yeah, so it'll be better in retrospect. I like the chapter. I know it's not been one of the most popular, but, I think it covered a lot of ground, or it introduced a lot of possibilities. So the other thing that we got in this chapter was the meeting with Louise and Mikasa, and I thought that was fantastic. That was absolutely fantastic.
I mean, could this finally be the character development I've been hoping for Mikasa? Where she stopped saying Eren every 2 seconds. And
from your mouth to Isayama's ears.
Yes,
please.
Exactly.
I've just been very excited for what's going on with Mikasa. This is something that I've always wanted for her, and it's really interesting now that we're finally getting it.
Yeah, I didn't think it would happen, but if he's going to continue with this, then I'm very, very happy to see it.
Her telling Louise, what did she say? Did she say, shut up? Oh, keep your mouth closed. I mean, again, my list of like badass SNK moments grows every chapter. That was to see her turn around and just be like, shut up. I loved it. And I like Louise. I feel for Louise. I mean, this traumatic childhood event, that moment with Mikasa saluting the little girl and the little girl saluting back is my favorite Mikasa moment. Absolutely. When I did my favorite character moment series, it was the moment I picked, because it was so powerful to see Mikasa give somebody... She's not the most emotive person. So to see her turn and salute that child, knowing that it would mean something to that child would take strength from it, was amazing. And now to see the result, though, the result is we've got this kid in the military with complete disregard for authority who values power and independence so highly. And that salute at the end where she salutes Mikasa as she's walking away was just so beautifully done. I mean, what a beautiful panel.
I wonder, because the scene was paralleled with what Mikasa's views on Eren, could you possibly say that how Louise absorbed the wrong things from Mikasa also absorbed the wrong message from Eren as well?
Interesting. I mean, maybe she's definitely, having the flashback at that moment. I think Mikasa is reconsidering everything. She's second guessing everything.
Mm-hmm. She is. I think Eren is kind of maybe her motivation to keep going and never give up, which is not a bad trait to have, I think. But Eren takes it to a whole new level and completely seems to disregard the people closest to him and their wishes, and kind of has made his own path, and he's just forging ahead. And
well, Mikasa in chapter 101, I think it was 101, where she's, heartbroken, looking at him, telling him there's no going back and begging him to come home. I mean, she's shook. She's absolutely shook.
Yeah, she is. I didn't recall the panel as well from like where we, find out about Mikasa's backstory. But if you see the amount of stab wounds Eren put into that kidnapper, that's the sort of rage you normally only see when people have a personal vendetta against someone. So to see that in this like little 8-year-old child going absolutely crazy and stabbing this man over and over and over again, it's kind of frightening in a way.
Not only that, I mean, I think about that chapter quite a bit. I mean, this is an 8 or 9-year-old child coming up with a charade about being lost in the woods, going into a broom closet, making a javelin or and just, I mean, this particular artwork is so amazing because you can actually see the number of stab wounds. And, while he's doing it, to be shouting obscenities. I mean, this is a kid. This is the equivalent of like a third grader wreaking this sort of havoc on a person. It's, it reminds me again how very dark this story is.
I feel like it's really important to show the furthest extreme that Eren goes to fight his enemies, or that his enemies in his eyes are no longer considered to be human. I believe during that scene, when he was stabbing the kidnapper, didn't he say that he wasn't even human anymore? And I feel like that's how Eren often views his enemies, that they aren't human anymore. Or at least it was. I feel like Eren starting to realize that since going to Marley, that there are people on the other side, but that end result is definitely how he still sees his enemies, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe so. I really hope that I'm kind of in the camp with a lot of other people that hope next chapter Armin will have that talk with Eren and we'll find out what he's actually thinking, because the talk with Reiner, he absolutely acknowledged that these people are humans. They're not monsters, but that didn't stop him from body diving into a crowd of them. So what about Mikasa's headache? Do you think it's important, or is it just, is this going to be some Acker Asian?
It's been recurring so often that it has to be something somewhat important. But for me, it's at this point, it's just something that happens to her when she recalls something very, very, distressing and something that had a great impact on her. And just like a psychosomatic symptom, she gets a headache. That's just my interpretation at this point.
I saw this post. I wasn't sure. I can't remember if it was on Tumblr or if it was on Twitter, but someone had drawn the conclusion that she gets these headaches because it's kind of from the memory when she was bonked on the head by the kidnapper. Like it's kind of like psychosomatic. So it's kind of related to what you were saying, Luna, that she gets these headaches because it's like the first, I guess, action into her family being killed.
There is a crack theory. I don't know if it's a crack theory. People might take it seriously that, when this happens, this is the coordinate power or some, of course, she's not Eldian, she's this Acker Asian hybrid, but that it's some external force impacting her at those moments, whether it's the coordinate or paths, or I don't know what the theory is, but I think that that's kind of a fun crack theory. I don't know how much weight I put into it, but it would be interesting if it turns out to be, I don't want magic in this series per se, but if it is related to her biology or something, I'd like to know the answer to that. I'd like to find out if it's just a headache or if it's blood magic.
I actually wouldn't mind if it was related to paths or the coordinate ability, mostly because I'm a very big fan of the time loop theory. I feel like the most probable ending for the series currently, as we currently stand, and that's just my opinion. I've never put much thought to what is causing Mikasa's headaches. It's kind of like Zeke. After a certain point, I've just kind of given up on thinking about it, and it's like, well, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. But if I had to put some money down, I would probably say something with paths is going on, possibly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, officially, she shouldn't be affected by them, but there's so little we know about Mikasa's unique biology that I guess anything is possible. So moving on, we're running out of time, so we should probably pick up the pace a little bit. But Pyxis' conversation with Yelena was another great moment. It was nice to get confirmation of, how Eren was, helped in the journey to Marley. And also, I've seen a lot of people in the fandom recalling back Pyxis' moment where he mentions that he wouldn't mind dying at the hand of a female Titan. And, Yelena being over 6 foot tall certainly fits that bill. Do you guys think there's anything going on with that moment there?
I would be very happy with that twist, because I feel like everyone's been kind of like going, oh, what beautiful female Titan will be the one who takes down Pyxis from Annie to Peak, and now we have Yelena as a giant woman in the ring now.
Yeah, he basically opened it up and called her a beautiful woman. I am pleased to have an excuse to speak with a beautiful woman. He's kind of asking for it.
Yeah, kind of.
I hope not. I really, really hope Pyxis makes it to the end of this story. He's one of the characters I've pegged as being somebody who lives to the end. So I hope that if he and Yelena have it out, I would like Pyxis to come on top. So we'll see. I know. This is wrong manga. I'm just going to say it. Wrong manga.
Okay.
You and LSJ want everyone, to die these horrible, painful deaths. And I want them all holding hands at the end. And
not everyone. I just want Reiner to live.
Yes. Well, we have our priorities.
Yeah.
So the chapter ended with this really extensive, how do we word this? Ideological battle. How did you guys take this final conversation between Kaya and Gabi? Because they are definitely talking about some real world issues. This has caused some upset in the Korean fandom. I'm not going to pretend to understand it. I don't know that much about history, but it's reignited some of the arguments about Isayama and about this manga and about the connection to it being propaganda, political propaganda that's upsetting to some people. And a lot of people are pointing at this conversation with Gabi and Kaya as more evidence. LSJ, you actually are in the Asian communities. You're a translator and somebody who can read the message boards. What's your take on this?
From what I've heard from friends in the Korean fandom, the fandom completely imploded overnight over whether or not what message they should be taking from the conversation between Kaya and Gabi. At first, a lot of the conversations mirror the conversations that we're having, that some of the people who know their history a little better are having currently having in Western fandom. So some believe that, is Isayama a right-wing nationalist? Is he making these types of claims? Other people are saying, well, what does it matter? It's just a manga. And then I feel like the majority are just very disappointed by what was said, that they're going to continue reading the manga and just see where it goes from here. So generally, let me read Kaya's response, and it gives some type of better explanation of why people are upset. So Kaya's response of, it doesn't make sense for you to apologize just because you were born in Marley. that has a lot of unfortunate implications when you think that Isayama might be using his manga to make commentary on Japan through the metaphor of Paradise and Marley, with Paradise being an analog for Japan. Isayama is essentially saying that modern Japan does not need to apologize for the atrocities that their ancestors did. And in the case of Japan, these events didn't happen thousands of years ago or even 100 years ago like they did in Paradise. World War II was 70 years ago, and there are still people alive right now who are still suffering from the effects of that war. And then when you think of this idea, you still have to think, well, why should people have to apologize for what their ancestors did? And then even if you have to really think about what has and hasn't been done in the country. Japan, in many people's eyes, hasn't given a sincere apology to Korea, China, or any of the other countries acknowledging their own war crimes, or specifically even naming the people who are hurt. Japan is also known for severely revising and whitewashing their home history. So even if you feel like an apology is not necessary anymore, full acknowledgement of what happened has not been reached yet. So,
yeah, I think mostly the problem seems to stem from, at this point, the acknowledgement of admitting the wrongdoings, and not necessarily as the people of Japan, but as the government of Japan taking responsibility of what happened in the past.
I feel like Japan isn't doing enough to acknowledge, as you stated before, Luna, they're not doing enough to acknowledge what is going on. Even doing research for this episode, I was reading Japanese entries and articles versus American articles on certain events. I read for the Nanking Massacre, over 30,000 people were murdered during that battle, and people were also severely mutilated and sexually assaulted. In Japan, it was something that's really horrible. And in Japan, there are a lot of people who stated that the numbers were grossly exaggerated, and that people who stated that they were raped or assaulted during this battle are liars, that never happened. There's also the fact of comfort women. And Gabi's line actually reminded me of that. Women being forced to have children they didn't want.
That was definitely a euphemism.
Yeah, essentially, and Japan's own government does not want to acknowledge that this happened. There are people even in the Japanese government right now who state that these women were willing prostitutes instead of Korean women, Asian women who were essentially forced into sexual slavery for Japanese troops. And it wasn't a small thing. This was over 200,000 women, and this was authorized by the military, by the actual government. And so when you hear that Japan does not acknowledge these things and that Japan does not apologize properly for these things, you can see why people would be upset. Anyway, going back to the actual conversation at hand. When Gabi is stating that you stole away the cultures of other people, you forced them to have children they didn't want, you killed countless human beings, she is expressing the pain that many people in Korea, China, and other Asian countries feel in regards to the past. And she's framed essentially as a crazy person.
Yeah, I'm torn on this. I mean, I could see it going one of two ways. If Isayama is clearly acknowledging, by mentioning the children and if he's clearly acknowledging that this debate exists, is he having children have this conversation to kind of impress upon it that both sides of it are very oversimplified? Or is this a situation where he is trying to make Gabi look completely crazy and Kaya sympathetic? And I think that, like you were mentioning before, some people are going to keep reading it. Maybe it's going to be a wait and see how much of that political message we're supposed to, which character ultimately is the reasonable one.
I mean, from what I gather, Gabi is supposed to look brainwashed and, she needs to have her beliefs challenged in this case. So I definitely feel like he's trying to make her believe of what happened in the past and wanting to make the Polarization atone for all their sins look at something that is no longer necessary. And I do not think that you can hold people accountable for the acts that others committed, but I do feel like as, a government of a people, you should take responsibility, and you should also try to atone for your mistakes, and I know that Germany has definitely done so. They have repeatedly stated what a horrible chapter the Second World War and before that was in their history, and they've also made repairs to the people that were wronged and to the survivors of their victims, and Japan has done no such thing. Also for like comfort women, that was also something that affected a lot of, well, not a lot of, hopefully, but definitely some Dutch people, because back then Indonesia was still a Dutch colony. And I still have a lot to say about, like, because Korea was also colonized by Japan. And I know from my own country's history that of course never went the way it should have, and that we also definitely committed atrocities in Indonesia, but nobody is trying to deny that those things happen. Nobody's trying to stick their head in the sands and say, oh, it wasn't as bad, or it also brought Indonesia good things. Like Isayama said that the colonization of Korea also gave them a lot of benefits. And that was just such a tone-deaf comment from him that it still really, really rubs me the wrong way. And then in combination with this chapter, really makes me question his morality at this point.
But I feel like for all the things that there are other nationalistic or even imperialistic ideas in the manga. I feel like chapter 88 with Kruger, where he's essentially saying there is no truth in the world. All it takes is someone to claim that you're a devil or a god for it to be true, and him questioning the 17 centuries of ethnic cleansing of the Marlians. That really seemed very similar to arguments that people in Japan have that, how do you know if all these crimes are true? How the Nanking death estimates are completely overblown, those two ideas. But for all these ideas that Isayama has, I feel like ultimately he is telling an anti-war narrative. In the same chapter that we have this kind of apologist argument with Kaya and Gabi, he also portrays the Eldian restorationist as extremist. Grisha is also seen wrong for the views that he's having, and Eren, who has adopted Grisha's memory, does not really believe in the idea of the Eldian Empire. He doesn't believe it like Grisha and Kruger did. I feel like Eren is using nationalism to get what he wants, and I feel like that's extremely important commentary in an anti-war narrative, especially in these days where you see just like a lot of disinfected or a lot of disenchanted, angry youth who don't have any real direction, or just kind of like latching on to the next thing to be angry at. So I feel like Isayama is telling a war narrative. He's just being a little sloppy with it. He's not giving it the care that it should be given. And I feel like I really wish this was not Isayama's first story. I feel like this was a very ambitious story for someone who's writing their first time manga to write.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. It's interesting. I appreciate you bringing this up because, like I said, I think it's something a lot of us in the Western family are just fandom are really clueless about. Like, we don't understand when I personally get anons telling me that SNK is Nazi propaganda, whatever. I always dismiss it because I'm not aware of the history, and I appreciate you being kind of balanced about it. Isayama is trying to be balanced in this regard. And of course, he's somebody who's grown up in his culture. Literature doesn't come in a political vacuum. It comes with all sorts of baggage. Going back to something you said earlier, Koreans aren't boycotting it at this point. They're reading it. They're angry about this, but they're still kind of at a wait and see about how ultimately the message is delivered.
I think at this point, from what I understand, a lot of them got back on it after the Marley arc because they were understandably very upset with Isayama admitting that Pyxis was based off of Akiyama Yoshifuru and the rumors about his private Twitter account. So a lot of them dropped it for a while, and I feel like there's more Korean fans who are invested in the manga now than they used to be, and now it's to the point where like, well, we'll wait and see because there's definitely things that reflect that Isayama is also trying to comment that these nationalistic views aren't a good thing either.
And meanwhile, I'm just, in my own world reading it.
In America.
Yeah, it's interesting to get that. I know. That makes it even worse, doesn't it? I mean, here you are talking about the Netherlands and I think in America, we're just so distanced from all of this.
Oh, and one last thing I wanted to mention, Mom, when you said questions about Nazism and SNK, I feel bad for stating this, but I've never felt like Isayama or this manga has actually had any overtly Nazi-ish meanings or like pro-Nazism or anything in the manga. I feel like Isayama is using these symbols or these images from history to talk about Japan. And I can understand why this would be very controversial, especially.
Well, I mean, part of me says yes, part of me says no. I don't think he's promoting Nazism at all, but he does have some very clear symbolism of Third Reich in his manga, especially like the uniforms the warriors wear. The first time I saw them, they made me very uncomfortable, very much so inspired by the Nazi uniforms, the armbands
you can't deny.
Yeah.
You can't deny the inspirations there. But a lot of times I think, and again, this is probably not handling it as well as he could have. He did that deliberately as a visual shortcut. So, you see somebody living in internment camps wearing armbands and you immediately get that feeling, that understanding that this is an atrocity. This is something, this is prejudice. This is a government completely out of line. I mean, it's a visual shortcut to kind of telling a whole story without having to tell the story.
Yeah.
But again, is it in poor taste for some people? Absolutely. I mean, I have Jewish friends, some who still love the series and appreciate that he's including that sort of symbolism. And then I have some that are just like done with it. Or very uncomfortable. And I'm fine with that. If it makes people uncomfortable, I think that we can respect that. It's hard seeing a chunk of your history represented in a way, especially when you don't know how it's going to end up or what the ultimate story is going to be. I really appreciate the fact that, you're kind of giving this information so that the rest of us can understand what's going on with this. I think since it was so deep, why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about, I'd love to discuss briefly the charity zine that was recently leaked to Tumblr and Twitter.
See you in a short while, guys. So welcome back, everyone. Right now we want to talk about something completely different, namely the charity magazine. Mom, would you like to just tell us what the charity magazine was?
Yeah, absolutely. So apparently there was an image leaked recently to both Twitter and Tumblr, some new artwork by Isayama featuring the vets and the 104th, just a really lovely modern AU type of illustration. And doing some research into that, it was actually part of a charity zine to support flood relief in Japan. And I just wanted to, since that image has been so widely distributed, I think it would be a great opportunity just to mention it. I think on my Tumblr and also on the SNK news site, there are links to how to purchase that zine. It's only $8 US. I don't know what it would be in other currencies, but it's not just Isayama's art, but I think it features upwards of 30 mangakas doing art, and all the proceeds are going to be going to the flood relief victims. So I just wanted to give that a shout out because I think it's something important and something fun. And especially since so many of us have seen the art, it would be nice if we would support it.
Yeah, and we'll definitely leave a link below so you can purchase the magazine if you're interested.
Okay, so since we've talked last Luna, we've had 4 episodes of the anime, and I know we don't have a lot of time to discuss it, but I think the biggest moment that was surprising to most people was that it was Mikasa telling Historia to punch Levi, and that worked for me. I actually really liked it. I think that Mikasa's relationship with Levi has kind of been well documented. She, calls him a runt. She's still a little... He's not her favorite person. So it coming from her to tell Historia to punch him, I thought it was actually like really great character development for her. It kind of was nice, especially since Mikasa and Historia had that moment in the cavern that has everyone so excited. It was just, I'm okay. I love Reeves. I loved the moment in the manga, but I'm okay with it being Mikasa's now. What about you?
I don't know. I liked her facial expression when she said it, but it came so out of nowhere that it was like, okay. What incentive does Historia have to punch him in the face or punch him?
I've heard. I haven't watched the anime, but I heard that the scene where Levi threatens Historia was taken out of the anime. Was that true?
Yeah, Levi didn't manhandle Historia at all, so it's kind of weird. He kind of just said, "You have," yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he just kind of said, you have to become queen. And she was like, well, I'm not so sure. And everyone else was like, she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to. And then Historia was like, okay, no, I'll do it. And that was it.
Yeah, it really does make Historia punching Levi Mikasa's grudge and not Historia's. It changes everything. I'm glad the punch is still going to be there. It's such a cute manga moment. I mean, it changes nothing in the ultimate story.
No.
Something else that's really worked for me was Yuki Kaji's voice acting. I thought Eren's voice acting has been out of this world amazing. I can't get over the talent that these people have, just how heartbreaking those moments were in the cavern.
Yeah, he's extremely, extremely talented. And, well, you know that Eren is not my favorite person in the manga at this moment. So I hope when we finally get to the Marley arc in the anime that his voice acting will be like the shining light in the darkness as far as Eren is concerned.
I'm kind of interested to see how he's going to do that sinister. Well, I kind of feel like Eren's very sinister during the Marley arc. So I'm kind of wondering how his sinister voice is going to sound like. So I know Kaji Yuki does all of these showdown heroes who certainly don't do these types of sinister voices. So I'm just kind of curious to see how he handles that.
I have confidence in him. I think he could do it. I think he's very...
I just felt really... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay. No, I think he's very talented.
I couldn't help but feel sorry for Bryce Papenbrook in the English dub. There is no way. I usually am not really picky about sub or dub. I like them both. There's no way I'm going to be able to listen to Bryce Papenbrook do the cavern scene. I might listen. I don't know. Like, do I listen to it for comedic value? I mean, or maybe I don't mean that. He's good. He's a good voice actor. I just don't see anything topping what we've heard from the Japanese voice actors for this arc. It's been fantastic.
It's been really good. And for me personally, I wasn't very satisfied with the pacing of the manga. I thought it was too slow. But because they moved so quickly in the first couple of episodes in the anime, a lot of character development was kind of cut out. And that made Historia's transformation in the cavern kind of jarring to me. But also Eren's breakdown didn't resonate with me as well. But then, of course, Yuki Kaji's voice acting changed that. Like I was almost crying.
Yeah, he sold it.
Speaking of the cavern, something I wanted to say was, again, I don't watch the anime, but I saw that the coloring choice for Eren's crystal or Eren's armor was very strange. I thought it would be something closer to Reiner because on the actual serum vial that Eren chomps on, it says armored brawn. So,
yeah, they skipped over that in the anime. It just said armor.
Oh, really?
Well, and then his transformation looked way more like what we've seen from Warhammer Titan than anything Reiner's done.
Or like Annie's partial like hardening or even going into crystal. So it definitely looks more like that. And I also expected it to look very different, like more like the walls, I guess.
Yeah, I was expecting like gray or white or even like a sandy gold color, like how Reiner's plates look like. I was expecting some type of Reiner influence, but it wasn't there.
No. It wasn't.
I still kind of wonder if,
I mean, it was Erwin's eyes blue.
Oh my God, Jesus. I cannot take you anywhere.
I know. I saw his name in my notes.
Aww.
Speaking of fangirling, I saw on my Twitter feed a lot of Yuri fans going crazy over Levy's Dancho and the dramatic pause that there was before he said it.
Oh, yes. Count me. I have the MP3 file of him saying Dancho. And Erwin's, I do. And Erwin's intake of breath afterwards. It's like, Dancho. It's just great.
Yeah, it's very sultry. It's like, Dancho.
That moment, I know on the the manga poll that you posted to Reddit, Luna, the comments were like, huh? People were so confused why Dancho was even on the poll, like why that even mattered. But that was such an important moment for Some of us, because it is the first time.
For a small part of the shipping fandom, yes.
No. It's such an important moment because it's the first time he's called Erwin Commander. It's the first time he's spoken respectfully. And
also the last time you informed me. I didn't know that.
The last time Levi, well, and LSJ knows this better than me. Levi, his crass way of speaking isn't always picked up on. So I always saw that "we need your opinion, Commander" moment, kind of a welcome back. Erwin could have ended up dead. This is their first time together after he was arrested and tortured. And it was kind of Levi very happily passing the reins back to Commander Smith. That's how I see it. Mm-hmm. But it's open to interpretation. No shipping goggles in place on that one at all. But I know I'm actually really happy with the anime. I don't have high expectations ever for anime. It's, it's like, I always call it the Cliff Notes version of the manga. It's never going to have everything I want, but it's hit the right notes for me for the most part. I'm crying over character development too, but it's been beautiful and fun, and I'm happy with it. I feel like a traitor to the fandom for saying that. Anything else about the manga?
For the anime, right?
Yeah, let's just go into questions.
Are we going to do a musical interlude?
Yeah, we can.
You guys need to do the Blue's Clues meal time. You just got a letter. You just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
I want to include this in the actual podcast. Can we not edit this out?
Me saying that you just got a letter.
Okay, so the deal is we got mail. And it's, we'd asked people to send in comments, and we actually got some. So I thought it would be nice if we read those aloud. I wanted to read, Luna, you got the first message that we received.
Oh, I did.
So very important question for Luna. Anon writes, when do you anticipate Isayama to show Reiner without pants, since he's drawn him shirtless recently?
If I'm very lucky, right before he dies, but
I feel like we've already gotten pantless Reiner.
We did, but he was covered by a blanket. So it doesn't really count, does it?
But we also have that colored paper that may or may not have been drawn by Isayama.
No, we're not talking about that. No.
If you're talking about what I think you're talking about, you're disowned. And
la. Can we mute her? Mute her. No. Okay. We have never seen Reiner pantless, ever.
We're going to cancel you as our guest.
Yes. Podcast canceled.
We don't know you anymore.
So
we're going to have people writing in asking what we're talking about. I am not answering it.
I'm not either. I'm not either.
Right, if anyone would like to know, can I tell your Twitter account?
My public Twitter account is
Bronze of Steel. If anyone would like to know what LSJ is referring to, I do not plan on talking about it, so you'll have to talk to, find LSJ on Twitter at Bronze of Steel, and she can share with you what it is she is so anxiously willing to share on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so since that was my question, let me ask LSJ a question, because you also got an ask. So, to Leviskinnyjeans, how do you think the Japanese SNK fandom compares to the Western fandom? Is it calmer? Wilder? Are there similar conflicts? I would be very curious to know, because I'm still fairly new to fandom stuff, and I'd be interested in knowing if there are cultural differences in the way things are. Thank you.
And they put a little heart emoji at the end.
Oh, that's very sweet. I'm very happy that I got a question. Generally, I feel like the Japanese and Western fandoms are very similar. Well, I feel like Japanese fandom is generally more polite and more focused on the plot. But those would be the biggest differences, I would say, in Western and Japanese fandom. A lot of the more popular characters in Japan are also the most popular characters in America and Europe, with a couple of exceptions. Also the same thing with ships and shipping wars. I feel like shipping wars aren't as bad in Japan, except you shipped Eri, Yuri, or Levihan, whereas in the shipping wars are even worse. And I personally say they're worse because their fights can actually affect things. For example, merchandising and polls. I believe a lot of, just to give you an example, over the Dolph dolls, There was a lot of sabotaging, like trying to sabotage each other. So, who would get the doll actually made of Erwin or Erwin or Eren. But Dolk ultimately decided to do both, but that's an example of it. And going back to the idea of popularity, there's some characters who are very popular in Japan or who are extremely unpopular in the West. For example, Bertolt is hated, like absolutely detested in Western fandom, but he is absolutely beloved in Japan. He's one of the most popular characters in the entire series, and his merchandise is known to sell out in minutes. I believe there was this little holiday Bertolt. I can't remember what holiday it was for, but he had a little drum and stuff. And his keychain sold out in 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. I know all his merch is also priced more, at a higher price, right? It's more expensive to buy his stuff.
Yes, Bertolt has really high resale values, so his merchandise will sell at double or even triple what someone bought it for, and people will buy it. And that's crazy. That's honestly crazy to me. I love Bertolt, but he's not worth that much money. and like characters who are very popular in the West, for example, like Armin and Reiner, they're like mid-tier popular characters in Japan. And Historia and Ymir actually have their popularities reversed. I feel like Historia is generally unpopular, and recent developments might have hurt what the anime might have given her a boost, whereas Ymir is a lot more esteemed than she is in Japan. And those are just my general observations. One other thing I wanted to point out is I feel like downer endings are more popular in Japan. Like the idea of the manga having a downer ending or an unhappy ending is more popular in Japan than it is in the West.
Oh, that's not encouraging. You mentioned that the J fandom actually has the ability to affect change on the manga. Is it, and you probably don't know this, but my understanding is that Hobo Eren was like not attractive enough for like maybe the super, super hot man bun Eren, was because the fandom was unhappy with how Eren looked as a greasy hobo?
I'll be honest here. I check the comments on Isayama's blog pretty often, and you will actually see some of the more honest and brutal comments on the manga on Isayama's blogs. People will just put down their opinions in every single entry that he had until Eren changed his looks. There's always something about Eren needs to change his look. Eren isn't handsome enough. It's like, what did you do to Eren? It's like, why does he look so greasy? And like just comments along that line. Like they were very upset. So I kind of personally feel like the change in Eren's looks was because of fan pushback. I kind of feel that way because I honestly feel like Isayama could have shown Eren as like a greasy hobo for the rest of the manga, and it would have worked. Symbolically,
right? It would have reflected his mental state.
I think his editor also said that he shouldn't draw Eren with his beard and all nasty, like he should look pretty.
Yes.
And Isayama was like, no, I'm gonna draw him like a hobo. I'm gonna do that. But then, I wonder if he backtracked after he saw the fandom response. He was like, there goes all my merch cash.
Well, I know many, many people in the fandom are absolutely grateful to the J fandom for pushing back on Hobo Eren and giving us hot man bun Eren.
No, he looks like a 12-year-old girl now.
He looks like Gabi.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Now you're going to get hate. Now you're going to get hate on.
Where's the lie, though? Where is the lie? Tell me.
They look like siblings, honestly. Gabi and Eren. If you didn't tell me they weren't related, I would have said they were.
They're so similar personality-wise as well. I know people disagree with that well.
Yeah, you guys are going to get hate mail. I'm telling you.
It's okay. I'm used to
Don't
it.
talk about it.
Rather be honest.
So lastly, we received a lovely, lovely email from another Anon, and I would just like to read it and thank this person. Anonymous asked, "Hello, I just finished listening to the first episode of your podcast, and I wanted to let you ladies know that it was awesome." Insert smiley face. "I greatly enjoyed listening to your thoughts and theories on SNK, and I'm so glad you're planning on doing it every month. Can't wait for the next one. I'm sure there will be lots of interesting things to discuss given the build-up present of the previous chapters, and also how much action there's going to be in the upcoming anime episodes. So thank you.
That is so
Anon.
sweet.
That was very sweet. Thank you so much. I would like to say as well, like the feedback we got on the first episode we published was so good. It really surprised me in a very pleasant way because I really didn't expect such an overwhelmingly positive response. So to anyone who listened, thank you. Yes, to anyone who listened and left a comment, whether it was on YouTube or Reddit or Tumblr, thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. I was also very touched with the reaction. So thank you, Anon, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, so thank you for listening to our second podcast. And I also like to thank LSJ for being willing to join us for this one.
I was very happy to be here.
Good to hear. So we'll be back next month with chapter 1010, and we'll have another special guest on.
And I wanted to mention, too, that even though our podcast is called You Hear Big Girls, we are not opposed to having male guests.
No, absolutely not.
I was talking to one of the male Redditors about it, and he kind of assumed that this would be an all-female podcast, but that's not the case. Luna and I are the big girls, and we are very open to having big boys on the podcast as well.
Or short, it's fine.
Levi is welcome to join us. Short boys are fine. We got this.
So thank you for offering your hearts and your ears, and until next time. Mom.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is going to be a running gag, I swear to God.
Oh.